Inside that meeting today with his colleagues, the congressman from New York, Anthony D'Esposito, a Republican who, by the way, is in a swing district. His race will be one of the more closely watched ones this upcoming November. Congressman, I know there's been a lot of action up on the Hill today. You raced to the camera for us. We appreciate it. And thank you for your time. Thanks for being back with us here on the Hill. I don't know if you heard me or not talking about what Trump floated behind closed doors. I'm wondering if you heard it or not. This idea of eliminating the U.S. income tax and replacing it with tariffs. Are you for that?
He did, but he made it very clear it was an idea, something to think about, something to talk about. But he also made very clear the issues that we need to focus on in the next few months, and that is the border. It's obviously inflation, it's our economy, and it's about working together. It's about being a unified Congress and getting our message across to the American people. That's really the most important message that was delivered by President Trump today.
Do you think that's real, though? I know I just heard you say it's an idea. You think that's real?
I think it's something that he's floating around. Listen, President Trump's a very smart man, very successful in business. I think that it is time that we hold our adversaries accountable. Obviously, President Biden has done a very poor job in showing strength as a country. It's one of the reasons as to why we've seen our adversaries take advantage of allies. And I think that President Trump is already thinking ahead to January of 2025 when he is once again president of the United States.
You talk about adversaries, you talk about strength. Congressman, you voted for Ukraine aid. Congressman Matt Gaetz, your colleague, says today that behind closed doors, the former president said of Ukraine, quote, "They're never going to be there for us." And he suggested that we should have paid U.S. troops instead of sending billions to Ukraine. Did you get your vote wrong, or does the former president have it wrong?
Listen, I don't think that we're going to agree on everything. I think that politics and government is about compromise. It's about having conversations, and it certainly doesn't mean that we're going to agree on everything. I'm sticking with the vote that I made. I think that sending funding to Ukraine is a better idea than sending young men and women from the United States of America.
So what about, and it's interesting, and one of the reasons, sir, that I wanted to talk to you, you're on the show often, but you were in the room today, but you're in one of these followed districts. And we saw what just happened with Larry Hogan, right? I know he's not in the House, he's in the Senate, but he is a Republican. And the former president seemingly surprised the Hogan team today by endorsing him after they told Larry Hogan your campaign was over. And I hear you say, Congressman, that you can't agree with the former president on every single idea, and I think most folks would think that's commendable. But what is the line, I wonder, as one of these swing districts that you have to walk of trying to win your race but not upset the top of the ticket?
Well, I think that President Trump made it very clear today when he explained the fact that we do need to be unified, and we also need to lean on the actual candidates, the members who know their districts best, to make the decisions that are in the best interest of the people that sent them there. And that's what I will keep doing. Listen, I represent a district that Joe Biden won in 2020 by 16.5 points. I have the most Biden district of any Republican in this country. And I will tell you that over the last couple of weeks, we received a poll back. And in a district that President Trump lost by 16.5 points, he is up by nearly double digits, and I am right there with him. This is a very different year. It's a different economy. It's a different country. And there are people, different demographics that historically, I think New York is in play, and it's one of the things that he talked about in that room today. New York is in play. Governor Hochul and the state Democrats have made our state a complete disaster. Cashless bail, criminal justice reform, what we've seen recently with congestion pricing. I mean, she is probably one of the most ineffective governors we've ever seen. And we are going to take that, and we are going to make sure that the issues that the Republicans are behind are on the right side.
What did he tell you about New York being in play?
He said that, a few weeks ago he was in the South Bronx, and the crowd that was there enthusiastically supporting him. Demographics that historically have voted Democrat, African Americans, Hispanics. I will tell you, part of my poll, we polled nearly 60% of Hispanics were voting and supporting myself and President Trump. Only 18% of the Hispanics polled in my poll were Republicans. That tells you that there's a shift, there's a seismic shift, and there's something that people are feeling. And they're tired of Joe Biden, they're tired of the disconnect that he has from the American people, and they are ready for President Trump to lead.
Congressman Anthony D'Esposito from the state of New York, breaking a little news there for us today on what the president said behind closed doors. Congressman, thank you. Thank you for watching, and make sure you go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.